The key to understanding the minister's work, I think, is what he said about history during this first class. We are here to study the history of the Bible, and each will use this information for his or her own devotional purposes. That didn't sound good. But at the same time, he encouraged us to use our brains and to read outside books. And this, I thought, was very encouraging. 3 weeks later, however, he said, "We are a family of faith. The Bible is not history." Then he clarified, and I quote, "The Bible uses history and projects it from a particular bias in order to nurture and justify faith." That's a typical sentence of his. Let me read it again. "The Bible uses history and projects it from a particular bias in order to nurture and justify faith." Doesn't that sound good? So round, and don't you love the word nurture? In other words, you have no respect for history at all, no respect for facts. You just go with your bias, and you justify it by calling it something soothing, faith. I want to get into the question of what was going on here. What's the psychology operating here? Why would this man choose a life of deception? Why would these educated, competent people choose to be lied to? And why do I think infiltrating their Bible class was and is a worthwhile thing to do? And why am I here 4 years later picking it up again? What encouraged me to come here and talk about this? I'll get to that. But first, I should be a little more specific about how these weekly meetings went. The session started in September. Class size was around 10. I attended every week, missed only one class when I had the flu. We had a study guide called Kerygma. Does that sound familiar? A Greek word meaning learning. The book had questions that were to be prepared, and prepare I did. For the first 3 weeks, I said very little in class. I would ask one question and then listen to the nonsensical answer and leave it at that. In addition, I would contribute maybe 1 or 2 bits of information to the discussion. I had not heard of anyone doing a project like this. I was doing research. I was observing. Initially my hope was that this would lead to a discussion group outside of church that would look at the writings of these writers that I had been studying. Elaine Pagels, Richard Elliott Friedman, Paula Fredrickson, Tim Callahan, Hyman Maccabee, Morton Smith, Bart Ehrman, Daniel Dennett. The writers that I found enlightening and who I suspected were not familiar to my classmates here. In the second week already, someone said, a fellow student said, "You sure know the Bible." And she said she enjoyed my contributions. Someone else assured me that they all appreciated my being in the class. I was welcome. I should not be afraid to speak. I should feel comfortable, another woman said, because this was an open-minded congregation. I felt encouraged and looked forward to a book discussion group, possibly. I had a bibliography ready to hand out, but eventually only gave it to one classmate, a 35-year-old man in the class. The minister clasped my hand at one point very early, very warmly, and told me how glad he was to have me in this class. He soon changed his mind. Am I talking too fast? So that was September. We had no classes in December. By January, I was ready for a new stage in this adventure. Mike, the minister, we all called him Mike, had been taping the classes for a parishioner who couldn't attend, so I thought I could do the same. Mike had his large tape recorder on the table. We were all sat around a U-shaped type of table. And then I had my tiny one, sort of like this. It was a different one, but it was of this size, very quiet and very unobtrusive. I started participating more and posing follow-up questions. And then at home, I listened to the tapes and typed up some of the more pithy parts of the discussion, especially between Mike and me, but also between Mike and other students, and sometimes just Mike's long theologizing. That's a word he used, theologizing. The next class, I would pass out copies to everybody in the hope that this would intensify the discussion and lead to an outside book club. No book club was ever formed. I noticed, however, that in class, instead of asking a question and accepting Mike's fuzzy answers, people were more inclined to stick to a topic and come back with more pointed questions. I also noticed that the minister got more and more irritable.